They were the most feared hunters in the galaxy. They stood 8 feet tall with black scales harder than steel. Their claws could cut through metal like paper. Their eyes glowed red in the dark. Every species in known space feared them, and they liked it that way. On a cold moon at the edge of their territory, a female gave birth. The birth was hard and painful. The medical machines hummed and beeped, but nothing could save her. She died holding her newborn cub, and the cub cried alone in the empty room until the elders came. 3 old warriors examined the tiny creature. They measured his body. They tested his claws. They looked at his scales. Then they looked at each other and shook their heads. The cub was small, too small. His left leg was twisted and weak. His scales were dull gray instead of shining black. By law, such a child was worthless. The weak had no place among predators. The elders made their decision in less than a minute. They carried the cub outside the outpost and left him on the frozen ground. He cried and screamed, but no one came back. The ship lifted off and disappeared into the stars. The cub was alone on the dead moon with nothing but rocks and dust. 3 days passed. The cub should have died. Any normal creature would have died. But something in him refused to give up. He crawled into a small hole between 2 rocks. He licked moisture from the stones. He waited, though he did not know what he was waiting for. On the 3rd day, a small human cargo ship called the Gentle Dawn dropped out of hyperspace with engine problems. Captain Park cursed at the warning lights on his console. His wife, Lee, was already checking the damage reports. Their daughter, Park, watched through the window as the ship descended toward the nearest moon. The ship landed hard but safe. The engineer crawled under the hull to find the problem, helped him while checked their supplies. They would need at least 2 days to fix the engine. Was bored. She was 16 years old and had spent most of her life on this ship. She loved her family, but sometimes she needed to walk, to explore, to breathe air that did not come from recycled systems. She told her mother she would stay close and stepped outside. The moon was ugly and empty. Gray rocks stretched in every direction under a black sky full of unfamiliar stars. Walked slowly, kicking small stones, thinking about nothing in particular. Then she heard it, a sound so faint she almost missed it, a cry, high and strange and full of pain. Followed the sound. She climbed over rocks and squeezed through narrow gaps. The cry grew louder. It was coming from a small hole in the ground, barely big enough for her arm. She knelt down and looked inside. 2 red eyes stared back at her. Screamed and fell backward. Her heart pounded in her chest. She knew those eyes. Everyone in the galaxy knew those eyes. The monsters from the stories. The hunters who destroyed colonies and ate their enemies. But the eyes were small and scared and wet with tears. Crawled back to the hole. She looked again, more carefully this time. It was a baby barely bigger than a human infant. Its scales were cracked and dry. Its body was shaking. It was dying. She ran back to the ship screaming for her parents. Came running with a weapon in his hand, followed close behind, grabbed a metal pipe. They expected an attack, an enemy, a monster. Instead, led them to a hole in the ground with a dying baby inside. Was the first to understand. Before could stop her, she reached into the hole and pulled the cub out. It was so light, so fragile. It curled against her chest and made a sound like a broken whisper. Stared at his wife. His face was pale. He knew what she was thinking and he wanted to say no. He wanted to say they should leave it. He wanted to say it was not their problem. But he looked at the tiny creature in her arms and the words would not come. Checked his data pad. He found records of on this moon 3 days ago. A birth, a death, an abandonment. He showed the screen to without speaking. They left it here to die, thought. They threw it away like garbage. Touched the cub's head gently. Its scales were cold. Its breathing was weak. But when she touched it, the cub opened its eyes and looked at her. Just looked. Like it was asking a question it could not put into words. Made the decision. She carried the cub onto the ship. She found warm blankets and clean water. She used her old knowledge from her years as to figure out what the cub needed: protein, heat, safety, love. Watched her work. He should have stopped her. He knew the dangers. They were not pets. They were killers. This cub would grow into a monster. But looked up at him with fierce eyes and said 4 words that ended the argument. "He is a baby." That night, while the cub slept wrapped in blankets in a cargo container, the family sat together in the small kitchen of the gentle dawn. They talked for hours. They argued. They worried. They imagined every terrible thing that could happen. In the end, sighed and rubbed his tired face. He looked at his wife, his daughter, and the sleeping creature they had saved. He did not know if this was brave or stupid, probably both. Named the cub Riven. It was an old Earth word meaning torn apart, because that is what his own people had done to him. They had torn him from life itself and thrown him into the dark. But now he had a name, and a family, and a chance. The gentle dawn lifted off the next morning with 1 extra passenger. The galaxy would not understand. The galaxy would call them fools, but the Park family had made their choice. They would raise a predator's child as their own. 7 years passed like water through fingers. The tiny cub that had pulled from a hole in the ground grew into something the galaxy had never seen before. Riven was no longer a baby. He was taller than now, with shoulders wide enough to block doorways and claws sharp enough to scratch metal. But his eyes were still the same. Soft, curious, hungry for something that had nothing to do with food. The gentle dawn became his school. Every room held a lesson. Every family member became a teacher. Taught him patience. The old captain would sit with Riven for hours playing board games from Earth. Chess, Go, games where thinking mattered more than strength. At first, Riven wanted to flip the board when he lost. His blood screamed at him to destroy what defeated him, but just smiled and set up the pieces again. Lose again, would say. Lose until you learn, then win because you understand. It took 2 years before Riven beat him for the first time, laughed and clapped his hands and told everyone on the ship. That night, Riven understood something important. Victory meant nothing if no one shared your joy. Gave him knowledge. She had boxes full of data chips with books from 100 worlds, history, science, philosophy, poetry. She did not care that we're supposed to be warriors, not scholars. She made Riven read every day. When he struggled with difficult words, she sat beside him and explained. When he asked questions, she answered them honestly, even the hard ones. "Why did my people leave me to die?" he asked once. "Because they were afraid," said. Afraid of anything different. Afraid of anything that challenged their ideas of strength. "But I am strong now." Touched his face gently. "You were always strong. They were just too blind to see it." Became his sister. She was 23 now, a young woman with her mother's fierce eyes and her father's stubborn heart. She had watched Riven grow from a trembling cub into a towering figure that made strangers run away in fear. But to her, he was just her little brother. Annoying sometimes, protective always, family forever. She taught him human things, music, jokes, how to laugh without scaring people, how to walk into a room without making everyone freeze. She taught him that a smile could open more doors than claws ever could. They fought sometimes the way siblings do. Once, Riven accidentally broke her favorite music player during an argument. He expected her to hate him. Instead, she cried for 5 minutes, then hugged him and said she was sorry for yelling. Riven did not understand. He had destroyed her treasure. Why was she apologizing? Because being right matters less than being family, explained. "I would rather lose every argument and keep my brother than win and push you away." Riven thought about those words for a long time. Taught him how to build. The engineer was a quiet man who spoke more with his hands than his mouth. He showed Riven how engines worked, how to fix broken pipes, how to make something useful from scrap metal. Were built to destroy. Showed Riven that creation was harder and more satisfying. One day, Riven built a small mechanical bird from spare parts. It could not fly, but its wings moved when you wound it up. He gave it to for her birthday. She cried and put it on her shelf where she could see it every morning. Riven learned that making someone happy felt better than making someone afraid. But not everything was easy. Riven's body was, even if his heart was becoming human. His senses were sharper than any human could imagine. He could hear conversations through walls. He could smell fear and lies. He could see in complete darkness. These gifts made him useful, but they also reminded him that he was different. And his leg never healed properly. He walked with a slight limp that no exercise could fix. By standards, this made him broken, worthless, a creature that should have died on that frozen moon. The shame lived inside him like a cold stone. He tried to hide it, but always knew. One night she found him sitting alone in the cargo bay. His shoulders were shaking. A strange rumbling sound came from his chest. We're not supposed to cry. Their biology did not allow tears, but Riven had found his own way to express grief. His whole body trembled with sounds that humans could barely hear. Sat down beside him without speaking. She leaned against his arm and waited. "I am broken," Riven finally said. "My own people knew it. They threw me away because I was not good enough. Sometimes I think you only keep me because you feel sorry for me." Grabbed his face with both hands and turned him to look at her. Her eyes were fierce and wet. "Listen to me," she said. "You are my brother, not because I feel sorry for you, not because you are useful, because I love you. Do you understand? I love you. That is not pity. That is not charity. That is family." Riven stared at her. In 7 years, he had learned many things about humans, but this moment taught him the most important lesson of all. Love was not earned. Love was given freely. And once given, it could not be taken away by weakness or failure or crooked legs. He put his arms around and held her gently. He was strong enough to crush her bones, but he had learned control. He had learned softness. He had learned that the most powerful thing he could do with his strength was choose not to use it. "I love you too," he said. The words felt strange in his mouth, did not say such things, but Riven was no longer just. He was something new, something the galaxy had never seen, a predator raised by humans, a killer taught to heal, a monster who learned that the greatest strength was kindness. The gentle dawn flew on through the stars, carrying its strange family toward an uncertain future. Riven did not know what waited for them, but for the first time in his life, he was not afraid. He had a home, he had a purpose, he had love. And that was enough. 10 years had passed since the Park family found a dying cub on a frozen moon. Riven was no longer a child. He stood 7 feet tall with scales that had darkened to deep gray. His claws were long and sharp. His teeth could bite through steel. But his voice was soft and his eyes were calm, and he moved through the galaxy like no had ever moved before. He worked as the security officer for the Gentle Dawn. His job was simple: stand near the captain during negotiations, walk through dangerous stations ahead of the family, let people see him and understand that this ship was protected. Most of the time, he did not have to fight. His presence was enough. Pirates saw him and changed their minds. Thieves looked at his claws and decided to rob someone else. Riven had learned that looking dangerous was often better than being dangerous. It meant less pain for everyone. But he also did something no had ever done. He talked to people. He negotiated. He made friends with species that should have been his prey. Merchants who sold to the Gentle Dawn learned that Riven was honest and fair. Station workers discovered that he remembered their names and asked about their families. Children who were brave enough to approach him found that he would kneel down to their level and speak gently. Word spread through the space lanes. Traders whispered to each other. Diplomats shared stories at their meetings. There was a who worked with humans, a predator who did not hunt, a monster who smiled. Some called him a miracle, others called him a freak. The Dominion called him something else entirely. They called him a disgrace. The Dominion was the government of all. They ruled through strength and fear. Their laws were simple: the strong survive, the weak die, mercy is weakness, kindness is death. When they heard about Riven, they were furious. A living among humans, serving them, protecting them. This was worse than death. This was betrayal of everything their species stood for. They sent a delegation to find him. The Gentle Dawn was docked at a human trading station called Port when the ship arrived. It was a warship, black and sharp like a blade. It carried 20 warriors and one leader. His name was, and he was everything Riven was supposed to be. 8 feet of muscle and rage, perfect black scales, eyes that burned with hatred for anything weak. Demanded a meeting with the abomination. Wanted to refuse, wanted to run, wanted to fight, but Riven touched each of them gently and said he would go alone. "They are my people," he said. "I need to face them." "They are not your people," argued. "We are your people." Riven smiled at her. "That is exactly why I am not afraid." He met in an empty cargo bay. The warriors formed a circle around them, walked slowly around Riven, looking at him like a butcher examining meat. "So this is what the humans made," said. "A broken thing pretending to be. I can smell them on you. Their weakness, their softness, their disease." Riven stood still. He did not respond to the insult. He had learned patience from. He had learned silence from. He knew that angry words were just noise. Grew annoyed. He wanted fear. He wanted shame. He wanted Riven to crawl and beg. "Your mother died giving birth to a defect," continued. "The elders were right to leave you. You should have died on that moon. Instead, you lived to become something worse than dead. You became a pet." Still Riven said nothing, but his eyes never left his face. "I offer you mercy," said finally. "A quick death, clean and honorable, better than the slow rot of living among prey animals. Accept my gift, broken one. Let me end your shame." Riven considered the offer. He thought about it seriously. The way had taught him to think about everything. Then he spoke for the first time. "No, thank you." Blinked. No had ever refused him before. For a moment he did not know what to do. Then his confusion became rage. He attacked. Was faster than lightning. His claws came at Riven's throat with killing force. Any normal would have met the attack with equal violence, but Riven was not normal. He stepped to the side, just slightly, just enough. Claws cut empty air. Spun and attacked again, and again, and again. Each time Riven moved just enough to avoid the blow. He did not strike back. He did not roar or threaten. He simply watched and moved and waited. The fight lasted 11 seconds. Made a mistake, a small one. He overreached on a killing blow. Riven saw it coming because he had spent years studying combat on data chips. He knew their patterns. He knew their weaknesses. He knew exactly where would be before knew it himself. Riven moved like water. He caught his arm, twisted and pushed. The mighty warrior hit the floor with a sound like thunder. Before he could rise, Riven was on top of him, one claw at his throat. The cargo bay was silent. 20 warriors stared in shock. Their undefeated leader was pinned to the ground by a broken runt with a bad leg. Riven leaned close to his ear. "My family taught me something your Dominion never understood," he whispered. "Defeating someone does not mean destroying them." He stood up. He offered his hand too. Stared at the hand like it was poison. Then he slapped it away and scrambled to his feet. His eyes were wild with shame and fury. He wanted to attack again. He wanted to kill Riven slowly. But his warriors were watching. If he attacked after losing fairly, he would look weak, desperate. "This is not over," growled. "It does not have to be anything," Riven replied. "Go home. Tell them what you saw. Tell them that strength is not always about killing." Spat on the floor and stormed out. His warriors followed in confused silence. The black warship left the station an hour later. Riven returned to the Gentle Dawn. His family was waiting, ran to him and checked him for injuries, clapped his shoulder proudly. hugged him and cried, just nodded with respect. "What happens now?" asked. Riven looked out the window at the stars. The Dominion knew about him now. They would not forget. They would not forgive. "I do not know," he admitted, "but whatever comes, we will face it together." The gentle dawn left port that night. Behind them flew back to space with a new feeling burning in his chest. Not just shame, not just anger. Fear, and a hunger for revenge. The distress signal came at midnight. Riven heard it first because his ears could catch frequencies that humans could not detect. He woke immediately, and within minutes the whole family gathered in the cockpit. The message was broken and desperate. A human colony called Nu was under attack. Raiders had landed. The defense force was dead. 3,000 civilians were hiding in basements and shelters, waiting for a death that was coming slowly. Trace the colony's location on the star map. Her face went pale. "That name," she whispered. "Nu. That was the old homeland of your family in Korea centuries ago." Understood immediately. This was not a random attack. They had chosen this colony on purpose. This was a message, a punishment. Riven looked at the distress signal data and saw a name that made his blood turn cold. The raiding party was led by. 2 years had passed since their fight at port. 2 years for to rise in power. 2 years for his shame to become hatred. Now he was burning a human colony to prove his strength, to wash away the stain of his defeat. Checked the navigation computer. They were 2 days away at maximum speed. The nearest military ship was a week out. There was no help coming. There was only the gentle dawn and its crew of 4 humans and 1 broken. "We cannot fight 50 warriors," said quietly. "We should call for help and wait." "In a week everyone will be dead," replied. Her voice was hard. "Children, families, people like us." Was already pushing buttons on the engine controls. He did not speak. He did not need to. His actions said everything. Riven stood at the window and watched the stars blur as the ship jumped to hyperspace. He thought about the families hiding in that colony. He thought about children crying in the dark. He thought about his own childhood on a frozen moon, waiting to die. "They came because of me," he said. "Wants revenge. If I had died on that moon like I was supposed to, these people would be safe." Grabbed his arm and forced him to look at her. Her eyes were fierce with anger. "Do not ever say that again," she commanded. "You did not bring this evil, did. You are not responsible for his choices. You are only responsible for yours." Riven looked at his family, was scared but determined, was already checking weapons, was making the engines perform miracles, was preparing medical supplies. They were going to fight, all of them, not because they could win, but because running away was not something the Park family did. Riven made his decision. For 2 days he planned. He studied everything about tactics. He memorized the colony's maps. He calculated angles and distances and timing. He designed traps that No would expect because No would think like him. Watched him work and understood. Her son was not planning a battle. He was planning a hunt. The gentle dawn arrived at Nu in the dark of the planet's night. They landed far from the colony in a forest of tall trees. Smoke rose from the settlement in the distance. Fires burned where homes used to stand. Had set up his base in the colony's center. His 50 warriors patrolled the streets in groups, dragging survivors from their hiding places. They were taking their time, enjoying the terror, playing with their food. Riven moved into the colony alone. He told his family to stay with the ship until he signaled. They argued, they begged, almost tied him down to stop him, but Riven was firm. "I know how they think," he said. "I know how they move, and they do not know what I have become." He disappeared into the shadows. The first night 3 patrols vanished. No bodies, no sounds, just empty streets where warriors used to walk. Sent search parties, they found nothing. The second night, Riven destroyed their communication equipment. The raiders could no longer call for help or coordinate their movements. Confusion spread through their ranks. Warriors who had never known fear began looking over their shoulders and moved through the colony helping survivors. They showed them how to set traps, simple things, pits covered with cloth, trip wires attached to noisemakers, places to hide, places to run, and stayed on the ship, using equipment to jam signals and track enemy movements. They guided Riven through the darkness with whispered directions. On the third night, Riven struck hard. He attacked supply storage and destroyed their food and water. He disabled their vehicles so they could not chase fleeing civilians. He left messages on walls written in the language. The hunter has become the hunted. By morning of the fourth day, 50 raiders had become 12. Some were dead. Some were injured. Some had simply run away into the forest, too afraid to stay. The survivors huddled together in the colony square. They were the strongest and most loyal of warriors, but even they were shaking. Something was hunting them, something that moved like smoke and struck like lightning, something that wore skin but fought like nothing they had ever faced. Stood in the center of his remaining warriors. His perfect black scales were dirty and scratched. His eyes were wild with rage and fear. He had come here to prove his strength. Instead, he had learned what weakness felt like. Riven stepped out of the shadows. He walked slowly into the square. His gray scales were covered in dust. His bad leg made him limp slightly. He looked smaller than weaker, broken. But his eyes were calm, and his voice was steady. "You called me frail," Riven said. "You called humans weak, but they taught me something your dominion never could. The most dangerous predator is not the strongest. It is the one who chooses when to strike." Roared and charged. His warriors tried to follow, but Riven's traps caught them. Nets fell from above. Pits opened beneath their feet, only made it through. The two fought in the burning square while human survivors watched from windows and doorways. Was faster, stronger, better trained. But Riven was smarter. The fight was brutal and bloody. Claws tore flesh. Bodies crashed through walls. The ground shook with their impacts. But slowly, painfully, Riven pushed back. He took wounds that would have killed any human. He kept fighting. Finally fell. His leg was broken. His arm was torn. Blood pooled beneath him. Riven stood over his fallen enemy with claws raised for the killing blow. He hesitated, looked up at him with hatred and confusion. "Why do you wait? Finish it. That is our way." Riven heard a voice in his earpiece. His voice. "Riven, come home." He lowered his claws. He stepped back from his defeated enemy. "Go back to your dominion," Riven said. "Tell them what happened here. Tell them what Frail looks like. Tell them that humans taught a broken cub to be stronger than your greatest warrior." He turned and walked away. Behind him screamed with rage and shame, but he could not stand. He could not follow. Riven walked through the ruined colony toward the forest where his family waited. Survivors emerged from hiding places to watch him pass. They did not run. They did not scream. They thanked him. An old woman touched his arm gently. A child offered him water. A man who had lost his family bowed with tears on his face. Riven did not know what to say. He was not used to gratitude. He was not used to being seen as a savior instead of a monster. Met him at the edge of the forest. She was crying and laughing at the same time. She punched his shoulder and then hugged him so tight that he could barely breathe. "Never do that again," she said. "I make no promises," Riven replied. The gentle dawn lifted off from Nu as rescue ships finally appeared on the horizon. Behind them lay in the dirt, surrounded by his broken warriors, staring at the sky with empty eyes. He had come to destroy a colony. Instead, he had created a legend. The Predator's child had defended his family's people, and the galaxy would never forget. The recordings spread across the galaxy like fire. Survivors from Nu had captured everything on their personal devices. videos of alone stalking through shadows, audio of human families being rescued from certain death, images of lying defeated in the dirt while his conqueror walked away without delivering the killing blow. The galaxy watched and could not believe what it was seeing. News channels played the footage constantly. Diplomats demanded explanations. Scientists asked questions that had no answers. How could a fight for humans? How could a predator show mercy? How could the weak defeat the strong? The Dominion fell into chaos. Half of their council wanted Riven dead. They called him a disease that threatened everything their species believed. The other half were not so certain. Young, who had grown tired of endless war, watched the recordings with strange feelings in their chests. Feelings they did not have words for. Feelings that made them question everything they had been taught. A movement began in the dark corners of society. They called themselves Riven's Path. They were young warriors and old scholars and mothers who had been forced to abandon their own imperfect children. They whispered to each other that maybe strength did not have to mean cruelty. Maybe power did not have to mean destruction. The Dominion tried to silence them. They failed. The idea had spread too far. The legend had grown too large. Meanwhile, the Park family received visitors at every station they docked. Diplomats from human colonies wanted to honor them. Military leaders wanted to recruit Riven. Scientists wanted to study him. Journalists wanted interviews. Refused everything politely. "We are haulers," he told each visitor. "We haul things, that is what we do." But the human colonial authority insisted on giving them something. They offered money, land, ships, titles, anything the family wanted. They could retire tomorrow as heroes. They could live in luxury for the rest of their lives. Looked at the offers and shook her head. What would we do with a mansion? Who would fix the engines? Laughed. Besides, I just passed my pilot certification. I did not work that hard to sit in a fancy house and do nothing. Said nothing as usual. He was already working on upgrades for the Gentle Dawn. His answer was in his hands. Riven received different visitors. Came to see him. Not warriors looking for revenge, but young ones seeking something they could not name. They asked questions that surprised him. How do you control your anger? How do you live without hunting? How do you find purpose without conquest? He did not have easy answers. He told them about his family, about teaching him patience, about giving him knowledge, about showing him love, about demonstrating that building was harder than destroying. He told them that he still felt the hunter's instincts inside him, the desire to chase, the hunger to fight. But he had learned that instincts were not commands. He could feel the urge to kill and choose not to. He could sense the desire to dominate and decide to cooperate instead. Choice, he told them. That is what the humans taught me. You can choose who you want to be. Your blood does not decide your destiny. Some of the young left confused, others left angry, but a few left changed. They carried Riven's words back to their worlds and shared them with others. The seeds of something new were being planted. Human ambassadors came with a different request. They wanted Riven to become a symbol, a bridge between species, a proof that cooperation was possible. They offered him titles and positions and importance. Riven considered the offer seriously. He walked alone through the corridors of the Gentle Dawn and thought about what his life could become. He could be famous. He could be powerful. He could shape the future of the galaxy. Then he passed the room and heard her singing softly to herself. He walked by the engine room and heard tools clicking and humming. He smelled cooking from the small kitchen and heard laughter at something on the news. He thought about what he would lose if he accepted. No more family dinners in the cramped kitchen. No more games with. No more arguments with. No more quiet work beside. No more books with. He would gain the galaxy, but he would lose his world. When the ambassadors returned for his answer, Riven met them in the cargo bay where his journey had truly begun. "I am not a symbol," he told them. "I am a son, a brother, that is enough for me." The ambassadors did not understand. They argued that he could do so much more. He could change history. He could unite species. He could become the most important who ever lived. Riven smiled. It was a human expression that still felt strange on his face. Maybe, he agreed, but I have already changed one history. I changed mine. My family gave me a future when my own people left me to die. They taught me that one life saved is worth more than 1,000 speeches. One family loved is worth more than 1,000,000 followers. He turned and walked toward the interior of the ship. I have work to do. We have cargo to deliver. If you need a symbol, I suggest you look at the humans who raised me. They are far more remarkable than I am. The ambassadors left empty-handed. They would tell stories about the strange who refused glory. Some would call him humble, others would call him foolish, but everyone would remember. The gentle Dawn took on new contracts and flew to new worlds. The family was older now. His hair had turned gray, moved slower than she used to, needed glasses to see small parts, but they still worked together like they always had, and was learning to fly the ship, preparing for the day when she would become captain. Riven stood at the window of the cockpit one evening, watching stars slide past in long streaks. Joined him, coffee in her hand, tired from her training. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Staying with us instead of becoming someone important?" Riven thought about the question. He thought about the frozen moon where he should have died. He thought about the cargo bay where first held him. He thought about everything he had learned and everyone he had loved. "I am someone important," he finally said. "I am your brother. That matters more than all the titles in the galaxy." Leaned against his arm, they watched the stars together in comfortable silence. Behind them and laughed at something in the kitchen. Tools made their familiar music. The ship hummed with warmth and life. The galaxy would continue to tell stories about the Predator's child raised by humans. They would debate and argue and wonder. But for Riven, the story was simple. A dying cub was found by a family who did not care what he was supposed to be. They only cared about who he could become. They gave him patience when he needed calm, knowledge when he needed direction, love when he needed hope. They proved that the strongest force in the universe was not claws or teeth or muscles. It was kindness. It was choice. It was the decision to save someone who the rest of the world had abandoned. Riven looked at the stars and felt peace settle into his bones. He was exactly where he was meant to be, not because of fate or destiny or blood. Because of love. And that made all the difference. The gentle dawn flew on through the endless dark, carrying its small family toward whatever adventures waited ahead. They were haulers, simple people doing simple work. But they had changed the galaxy without meaning to. They had raised a predator's child and taught him to be gentle. They had shown the universe that strength could be soft, that hunters could become healers, that monsters could become family. And somewhere out there, young were choosing new paths. Human colonies were opening their doors wider. Species that had always feared each other were starting to talk. The Park family did not know about all of this. They did not know that they had started a revolution just by loving one abandoned child. They only knew that they had each other, and that was more than enough.